Welcome to Introduction to Marketing, Chapter 1. Before we get into this set of slides and the entire course, I want to take a moment to tell you what I tell every first year student in the marketing class. The good news is every single one of you comes into this class as an expert in marketing already. And you may think, well, how is that possible? I've never taken a marketing class before. How could I be an expert? Well, you're an expert because you've been exposed to marketing messages, you've been marketed to quite literally since the day you were born. You are an expert in marketing because you've been influencing consumer behavior since actually before you were born. When your mom and dad, got ready for your arrival by buying, diapers and a crib and a car seat. Um, you are an expert because you have all been consumers. You've purchased things. You've participated in the consumer purchasing process, whether it's been a cup of coffee or a new cell phone or a pair of shoes. You've purchased things in your lifetime. So you're an expert in marketing in that way. Some of you may actually have some experience doing some marketing as well. Some of you may have had some jobs where marketing was a part of your responsibility, whether you worked at McDonald's and asked people, do you want fries with that? Upselling. Whether you worked in other kinds of retail establishments, you may have done some marketing. But actually, if you've ever even applied for a job, you've done some marketing. You've marketed yourself. Or if you've ever asked someone out on a date or gone out on a date, you've been marketing yourself as well. So I like to start this whole class from that perspective. You're already an expert in marketing, and my job over the next 3 months or so is to give you some of the theoretical and conceptual foundations from which you'll understand what marketing is and how it has impacted or shaped your life. You should, as we go out throughout this whole course, find yourself going, oh yeah, I've experienced that before. Or, I remember a time when I saw this happening, or I never knew that's what it was called. It should be a lot of what I call aha moments, and very few actually moments where you think, I've never heard of this before. So let's start from that perspective. All of you are already experts in marketing. So let's go from here and see what else we know about marketing. So what is marketing? If we were together in a physical classroom, this would probably be one of the first things I would ask you. What do you think marketing is? And actually, over the years when I've taught this class in person, the most common answer that students often give is that marketing is the same as advertising. And I love that response, but it's not correct. In fact, if you look at the 16, I believe, chapters that we're going to cover in this class over the next few months, there's only half of one chapter that's dedicated to advertising. Yes, advertising is an important part of marketing, but marketing is so much more than advertising. Another common response that I get from students is that marketing is all about sales or selling. And yes, again, that's a really important part of marketing. But it really is just one small important part of marketing, and marketing is much bigger than that. Marketing is really about finding ways to connect with or engage with your customers in a meaningful way and manage those profitable relationships. The goals of marketing are to attract new customers by promising value. We're going to talk a lot more about value over the next week or two. And to ultimately keep and grow current customers by continuing to deliver value and satisfaction. So marketing is really about finding ways to provide value to your customers, and then in return getting value back from your customers in the form of their loyalty, their commitment to your product and brand, and ultimately the revenue that you generate from those relationships. Marketing is all around you. You can't get away from it. We see marketing from the time we wake up in the morning and you go into the bathroom to brush your teeth. You're being marketed to, because the tube of toothpaste that you grab when you go to brush your teeth is clearly branded. When you go into your kitchen and pour yourself a bowl of cereal, it's branded cereal, and you're pouring branded milk on top of that. When you leave your home and drive down the main street here in Charlottetown, you're bombarded with marketing messages. You see signage for Staples and Walmart and Starbucks and McDonald's and Wendy's on your way to the university. If you have the radio on in your car, you might hear some commercial jingles while you're driving your vehicle. You're being marketed to all day, every day, and actually it's very, very hard to avoid marketing messages. We see it everywhere. We see it on our phone, we see it on our TV, although we're developing ways in which we can minimize our exposure to marketing messages when we watch sort of TV programs, for example, on Netflix or some streaming services. Those are designed so that we can avoid some of the exposure to advertisements. But the stuff, the flyers you get in the mail, we're exposed to marketing messages all the time. Thousands and thousands and thousands of those messages every single day. In recent years, marketers have assembled a whole array of different marketing approaches, ways that they can get their products and brands and ideas in your face, in front of you. Some of them are really quite creative, whether it's putting up signage in a public bathroom, for example, or in terms of a bus shelter, or innovative ways that they're trying to target you through your social media or your cell phone or mobile device. They're finding ways, and increasingly creative ways, to reach you. And the reason they're doing that is because the traditional ways of reaching you no longer work, or no longer work as effectively, because especially younger generations, we're actively trying to avoid being exposed to marketing messages in the traditional way. We're spending way more time on our mobile devices, for example. So marketers have no choice but to try to find ways to use those those devices, those mobile devices, as a means to market to you. So we're going to see all kinds of examples of that over the coming weeks and months, where marketing is you may not realize you're being marketed to, but you are. It's literally everywhere. I think it's important for every single introductory course to start with a fundamental definition of what it is we're talking about. So here we go. This is the definition of marketing. It is the process by which companies engage customers, build those strong customer relationships, and create value for their customers in order to receive or capture value from their customers in return. Marketers are promising to give customers something of value. In return, the customers have to give the organization or the company, the marketers, something of value in return, which is usually, but not always, it's usually money. In other words, if the marketer engages customers effectively, if they can find a way to connect with customers in a meaningful way and understands what their real needs are, and develop products and services that help satisfy those needs and provide really good value to customers, then what you will find is you will develop a customer base that is loyal and receptive to your offerings. You'll notice in this second little blurb, 4 Ps. Marketers develop products for their customers. They develop pricing strategies that appeal to those customers and reflect the value that customers can expect to derive from those products. It distributes those products in various places. That's the other P. So it distributes them through various channels, whether it's retailers or online or through catalogs or other places, and ultimately promotes them. So promoting them is communicating to customers about the products and services that this company has to offer. So those are the 4 Ps. We're going to get into that more in a little bit. So this visual is just a visual depiction of the marketing process. So how do you create and capture customer value? Again, the first thing you need to do is understand the marketplace, what customers need, and what they want. Then you need to design products and services that provide value to customers in order to satisfy those needs and wants. Then you have to create a an integrated marketing program, these 4 P's: product, price, place, and promotion, that will ultimately provide or deliver that value to your customers. You need to find ways to engage them, connect with them, and build those profitable relationships. And in return, customers will provide you, the organization, value in return by purchasing your products, paying for them, giving you money in return for the value that they derive from your product. We're going to spend the next few minutes talking about understanding the marketplace and what customers need. We're going to talk in more depth about needs, wants, and demands, and what are the differences between those 3 words, what a market offering is, what exactly do we mean by customer value and satisfaction, what are we talking about when we talk about exchanges or relationships, these ongoing sort of back and forth between an individual consumer and a business, and ultimately what markets are we talking about. So we're going to talk about that for the next few. In marketing, we talk an awful lot about needs, what customers need, and it's actually not the right word. If we really want to get picky about it. Needs, things that we need as human beings, are things that if we do not have them, we have a real profound sense of deprivation. We have physical needs. We all need food. We all need clothing. We all need to be warm, especially in a PEI or Canadian winter. We all need to be safe and free from danger. We all have social needs. We want to belong to a group. We want to feel affection. We want to feel those sort of interpersonal connections with other people. And we have individual needs. We have a thirst for knowledge. And we need to be able to express ourselves and who we are as individuals. Those things are really important. But that's not really what we're talking about for the most part when it comes to marketing. What we're really talking about is wants. Wants are those human needs that sort of that are shaped by our culture and our personality, that go beyond our mere survival. Yes, we all need food to survive, but I don't just want food. I want a burger. That's sort of a distinction between a need and a want. A need for food could be sort of anything. A piece of bread would be sufficient. But most of us don't sort of stop at the basic level of our physiological needs. We have sort of culturally defined or individually defined needs that go beyond that. And so those are wants. Those are things that we don't really need them to survive. Other things would satisfy the basic physiological or functional need, but we actually want more than that. Those are wants. And when those wants are backed up by buying power, meaning we have the money to actually afford these things, these wants become demands. So for example, I may want a brand new Lamborghini, but it doesn't matter how much I want it. I do not have the money to buy it. So that never sort of translates or transfers into a demand for me. If I want a burger, I may have a $20 bill in my wallet. I can afford to buy that burger. So all of a sudden that want then can translate or transfer into a demand. The market offerings are those products, services, information, or experiences that companies develop in order to satisfy a need or a want. Right? These are what companies are offering up for sale in order to try to satisfy a need or a want that exists among a particular consumer group. This next little phrase or terminology called marketing myopia really is just something. It's not a good thing. It's when companies they're more focused on the products that they offer rather than the value that they're providing to their customers. So their marketing myopia means they're focused more on what they're doing and the products they're developing and less on ultimately the consumer at the end of the day and what they need and what they want and what they value. So having a sort of a myopic viewpoint in marketing is not considered very good. Today, customers or companies are expected to think about their customers first and develop those products and services with the end customer in mind. It's not about building a product first and then finding customers. That's not how marketing is viewed today. Whenever we buy a product or a service, we have expectations about the value that we're going to derive from that purchase. And our level of satisfaction is tied to how closely the value that we actually derive from a product or service matches what we expected. So when I go to Wendy's and buy the junior bacon cheeseburger off the value menu, I know what to expect. I'm expecting sort of a cheap, standard fast food burger, nothing fancy. I'll get it quickly. It'll kind of satisfy a quick burger craving. And because I know what to expect, I've been to Wendy's before, um, and they deliver what I expect, which is a quick, cheap burger, then I leave there feeling satisfied. If I went to a nicer restaurant, let's say Sim's Steakhouse in Charlottetown, and I ordered a burger from their menu, which I don't know, maybe it runs $25 or $30, and they brought me basically a Wendy's Junior Bacon Cheeseburger, I would not be very happy. When I go to a restaurant like Sim's, I have an expectation that I'm going to have a really high quality meal. The products and service that I expect is going to be very high. And so if they served me a junior bacon cheeseburger from Wendy's, I wouldn't be very satisfied. So satisfaction is related less to quality and more to expectations. What do you expect to get uh, from this product or service, and does your actual experience match that expectation? That's how that's what we call satisfaction, and that's what we talk about when we're referring to value. You're going to hear the word relationship or relationships a lot in a marketing class. And the reason is because marketing isn't a one directional activity. It isn't a company marketing or communicating, trying to sell to you, the consumer. Marketing today is about relationships. It's a two-way exchange of value. The companies promise to give you value through their products and services, and in return, they expect to get value from you in terms of your hard-earned money or your brand loyalty or any of those other things that they derive that are of value. So, marketing isn't just one directional. It's actually an exchange. The company gives you something and you give them something in return, right? And those important relationships enable that exchange to happen. So what are markets? Well, markets are actually the set of actual and potential people, consumers, who might buy your product or service. The job of businesses is to search for and find ways to connect with those actual or potential buyers, figure out exactly what it is that they need, design products around those needs, establish prices for those products that sort of uh, align with the value that is being exchanged, promote them or communicate with customers through various promotional channels, and deliver those products to them. Those are the 4 P's of marketing. And again, we're going to talk a lot about more about those in the next few slides and also over the next few weeks. In addition to customer relationship management, today's marketers also must figure out how to effectively manage customers' interactions with them. And we're going to talk a lot more about those relationships over the next few slides. Marketing is not something that happens strictly between a company and end consumers. There are a lot of other parties involved in the marketing system as well, including suppliers that supply the business with the raw materials or components for them to make their products. It's the competition and how the competition interacts or engages with both the company and the end consumer. There are intermediaries, so a lot of companies manufacture a product but sell it to an intermediary like a retailer, and the retailer is the one that actually sells the product to the final consumer. And then of course there's the final consumer. And we're going to talk a lot more about suppliers and competition and intermediaries and sort of the overall environment in which organizations need to conduct their marketing activities over the next few weeks. So the majority of the next couple of months, we're going to be talking about developing a customer-driven marketing strategy. How do we provide value to our customers? What are all the different ways marketers can do that? And I'm not even going to begin to try to summarize that here because that's really what the next 10 or 12 weeks are going to be all about for this class. I get a lot of students who think that marketing is going to be a very creative and artistic sort of part of a business program. And absolutely, there's a lot of creativity and innovation that's embedded into marketing, but there's also a lot of science behind it as well. And people, I think, often misunderstand that or don't know that the science is very much a part of marketing. Marketing is actually an interesting blend of art and science, the creativity side of it, but also the evidence base, the data side of marketing. And we're going to talk a lot more about that in the coming weeks as well. And at the end of the day, it's all about designing a winning marketing strategy. We won't really do a marketing strategy in this class, but you have to take a third-year marketing class. It's required for the business program. And in that class, we definitely talk about and actually practice developing marketing strategies in terms of things like figuring out who our target market is, what is our value proposition going to be, and you'll understand what those things mean in the weeks to come. So what do we mean when we say target market? Well, we're going to talk a lot more about this later on as well, but your target market are those customers you're deciding as an organization to focus on. The reality is most companies, if not all companies, have such limited resources that they can't actually target everyone. And you may think, well, companies like Coca-Cola or Amazon, they target everyone. And the reality is they actually don't. They target a large number of people, millions and millions and millions of people, but they're still not targeting everyone. So choosing which segments of the population to target with your marketing strategy is called targeting. Breaking up those groups into smaller groups is called market segmentation. We're going to have a whole chapter about this in a few weeks. So segmentation refers to taking a broad population of people and dividing them up into smaller, meaningful groups so that you can develop marketing strategies specifically for these smaller groups. And so companies need to make some really important decisions. Who are we going to target and how are we going to target them? And that's something that we're going to talk a lot more about, I want to say in 3 or 4 weeks' time. If I had to choose sort of one phrase that summarizes what marketing is all about, it would be this one: value proposition. What are all of the ways a company is going to provide its customers value? That is a value proposition. You must figure out how you as a company are going to deliver value in a way that is different than other companies in the marketplace. If you're providing the same value as all the other companies in your industry in the marketplace, why would anybody choose to buy from you? So it's about choosing ways to provide value that are actually different and meaningful to your customers. A brand's value proposition is the set of benefits that you promise to deliver to your customers to satisfy their needs. The value proposition should be able to answer, why should I buy this brand over this competitor's brand? And if you can't answer that question with something that's really meaningful and relevant to your customers, then you don't have a value proposition, and you may want to think about whether or not you even belong in business. This slide really sort of tries to encapsulate or help us understand how marketing has really evolved over time. In the early days, when marketing was really becoming a concrete and specific aspect of business operations, they really focused on the production of how products got made. That was where marketers spent their time. And over time that evolved. And then they started focusing, instead of on how products were made, the production function, they started thinking more about the product itself and how products provided value. And then they moved on and started talking or thinking more about how to sell these products. And it was very much focused on getting the products into the hands of consumers. And then it evolved even further to talk more about sort of value and satisfaction and thinking about what the customers needed. And now we've moved on even further and we're looking at sort of the societal marketing concept, sort of what role does marketing play in the broader societal context. It's really important for you to read up on these particular marketing orientations in the textbook for more clarification. These next couple of slides are just really visual representations of these various marketing orientation concepts. So take a look at these. So you see selling concept starts at the factory. It focuses on the existing products that companies are making, and it focuses primarily on selling those products to as many customers as humanly possible. In contrast to that, the marketing concept focuses on the market. Who is your target audience? That is the primary focal point first. Then we figure out what those customers actually need. Then we develop a marketing plan to meet those needs, and we derive profit for our company through customer satisfaction. This particular orientation, the societal marketing concept, is sort of where we are today. We're no longer satisfied, especially younger generations, with just the relationship between an individual consumer and a company. And we're spending more and more time thinking about and wondering how the overall welfare of human beings and of our environment fits into this whole sort of relationship. It's no longer a two-person relationship between customers and company. We're now adding broader societal concerns into that relationship as well and taking those things into consideration. So you've heard me mention it a few times already, but this is important, and we're going to spend certainly the last half of this entire course talking about what are called the 4 P's of marketing. The 4 P's of marketing are also called the marketing mix. They're product, price, place, and promotion. And if you look at the course schedule or even the course textbook, you'll notice that over 50% of the textbook and the slides and the topics that we're going to cover over the next 10 to 12 weeks actually focus on those 4 things. The 4 P's of marketing, or your marketing mix: product, price, place, and promotion. These are the 4 ways in which companies can provide value. And each company has to develop a particular strategy for each of the 4 P's: a product strategy, a price strategy, a place strategy, and a promotional strategy, and fit all of those 4 strategies together, and that is your marketing program. And so this is going to be a real focal point, mostly after the midterm, but you'll certainly see these 4 P's of marketing cropping up every week as we work our way through this course. So let's get back to relationships, those important customer relationships, and capturing value from your customers. It's really about managing the relationships, finding ways to connect in meaningful ways to your target audience, to your customers, and finding ways to get your customers to engage with you. So this relationship can't be just the company communicating with the customer. The customer has to communicate back in some way, has to engage back in some way. Otherwise, it's a one-way relationship, and those just don't work. In addition to this, increasingly, companies are trying to find ways to get their consumers to help them in their marketing activities. So, for example, when you follow a brand, for example, on social media, and maybe you like or retweet or comment on a post that they make, you are engaging in the marketing process. You're helping them market themselves, and that's an increasingly important part of engaging customers and managing those customer relationships. I know for myself, for example, I follow Starbucks on Twitter, and every once in a while I'll either like or retweet something that I see that they've posted, and so I'm an active participant in the marketing process. I'm not passive. I'm actively involved as a customer in these important relationships. How do we capture value from customers if we're a company? Well, we create loyalty, and we help retain customers, get them coming back time and time again, over and over again, to make purchases from us. So some of us have very habitual consumer behavior. So for example, I go to Starbucks every single day. It's extremely rare that I miss a day going to Starbucks. I'm an extremely loyal Starbucks customer, and it would make a lot of sense for Starbucks to make sure that I continue to be a loyal customer of Starbucks. So that's one way. Loyalty is an important measure of value from customers. Also, growing the share of the customer. So in a particular product category, how much of that customer's disposable income gets spent with your company versus your competition. So let's say every week you spend $50 on coffee. How much of that $50 goes to Starbucks? How much of that $50 goes to Tim Hortons? How much of that $50 goes to one of the coffee shops on campus? So how do you divide up the money that you spend on this particular product category? Obviously, the greater proportion you spend with one company over another, that's what we refer to when we talk about the share of customer. And of course, building customer equity. Good customers are repeat customers. And so when I go to Starbucks every day, my drink comes to $5.81. The price just went up. But my value to the company is not $5.81. My value to the company is how much I have spent at Starbucks over the past 15 years, 10 years, I guess, 10, 15 years, and how much I'm going to spend into the future. And when you add that all up, that is the equity that I have for that company. And so building that loyalty, encouraging me to come in more often and spend more money, those are ways in which the company can derive value from me. So what do we mean by perceived value, satisfaction, and delight? Well, these are just slight variations of a customer's experience or how they value their relationship with the company. So customers' perceived value is the customer's evaluation of the differences between all the benefits they get when they purchase your product and all the costs associated with that, right? So it's a cost benefit analysis. Am I getting more value than it's costing me? And costing doesn't necessarily just mean the price of a product, the dollar amount for the product. There are other costs as well, and we'll talk a lot more about that when we talk about pricing strategies. But that's what perceived value means. Satisfaction, we talked about a few slides earlier, is the extent to which a product's perceived performance matches our expectations. It's the matching game. It's what we believe we can expect to receive from a company and how closely that matches what we actually receive. And customer delight is ultimately companies that aim to make their customers very happy by promising only what you can actually deliver and delivering more than that. So, a great example, just a few weeks ago, we were at a restaurant and we had to wait for a table, which was fine. The person said, oh, it'll be about 10 or 15 minutes. Wait, which was fine. And about 2 or 3 minutes later, they came out and they said, our table is ready. They far exceeded our expectations. We were incredibly happy that we didn't have to wait 10 or 15 minutes for a table. They not only delivered what they promised, they over-delivered. And they did a great job, and we left feeling very satisfied and very happy. So not all customers are the same. Some customers are more desirable than others when it comes to who you want to target. Low margin customers are those customers where you may make a little bit of money, but they're not super loyal. You're not making a lot of money off of these customers. We don't want to get rid of them or cause them to be dissatisfied, but they're really not a major focal point unless you can increase the value of those customers. We've got full partnerships and we've got high margin customers that you derive a lot of your profitability from. Customers who spend a lot of their money with you and are very, very loyal. Those are very, very valuable customers. And it's really important to understand not only who your customers are as a group, but separate those customers into those who are very profitable for you and those that are less profitable. We're going to spend a little time talking about that. Some of the tools that customer or companies can use to help develop those relationships include frequency marketing programs. So rewarding people for buying a certain amount or coming in regularly, or these loyalty programs. Those are really, really popular now because they're a relatively inexpensive way to do two things. One is to encourage loyalty, which is obviously of value to companies, but the second one, most loyalty programs, is that companies are able to capture data about you. So every time you swipe your loyalty cards, whether it's at Starbucks or at Shoppers Drug Mart or at the superstore, and you swipe your card, your loyalty card, what you're doing is actually letting these companies to capture data about you. And that's very, very lucrative for these companies. So loyalty programs work really, really well. And then, of course, you have things like club programs where you need to belong, like Costco, for example, where you need to belong to the club. That's a marketing tool that they use to help encourage you to exclusively or to do a lot of your shopping where you are a member. And those kinds of strategies, we'll talk a lot more about those when we talk about promotional activities, are really, really important. So relationships are two-way. You can't have a one-sided relationship that is functional. That's true in our personal relationships, but it's also true in business to consumer relationships. And in order to have a functioning relationship between a company and or a brand and consumers, there needs to be some level of consumer engagement. Customers have to take part in the marketing. They have to engage with the marketing in some meaningful way. So just communicating in one direction is not sufficient. Good marketing relationships involve a two-way engagement. Customer managed relationships and brand advocacy. So how do you manage the way people engage with you? So for example, a lot of companies have social media accounts, Twitter, for example. And one of the ways they can manage their customer relationships is by actually having those social media accounts staffed with people who can engage with and have conversations with the people who are maybe posting or sharing or liking or tagging the brand in their own social media posts. And so that's one type of engagement that can happen. I think it was last fall or maybe the fall before, I posted something about Starbucks, and Starbucks Canada retweeted it. So that was a way for them to engage with me. I remember going into Starbucks the next day and telling the manager that Starbucks Canada had retweeted me, and so it was a two-way exchange of communication. Marketers must find ways to enter the conversations that consumers are having, and that doesn't mean necessarily, you know, two people talking to each other and all of a sudden they're talking about a brand, but it's a form of communication. You need to find ways to get people to communicate with you. We're no longer willing to sit by and be passive. We actually want to engage with brands. And so many of us, if you looked at your social media accounts, many of you might actually follow some brands, whether it's Lululemon or maybe it's a sports team or it could be a celebrity. Those are all brands that you may be engaging with in your social media activity. So it could be things like posting a funny video or creating a social media account. Those things are great, but until you can find a way to get customers to like and share and engage with those types of activities, they really don't amount to much in the end. Consumer-generated marketing is actually relatively new, and the reason it's relatively new is because the power balance between companies and consumers has shifted. 2 decades ago, companies had all the power and consumers really had relatively little power. when it came to the relationship between companies and consumers. That's actually not the case anymore. Individual consumers have an enormous amount of power. For example, think about it. If you have a bad experience with Bell Alliant or Air Canada, maybe you post something to Twitter and maybe your followers repost it or comment or reply. These kinds of uh, communication options provide power to consumers that we didn't have decades ago. So one of the things that marketers are increasingly trying to do is encourage consumers to generate their own marketing, to develop their own conversations about brands. Now, obviously, when you do that, there's some danger in doing that because, of course, some of the communications that consumers may develop might not be very favorable to your brand. And that certainly is a problem, and many companies have actually had some real problems with consumers generating their own marketing that wasn't very favorable to the brand. But increasingly, marketers or companies are accepting the fact that consumers now can play a very active role in the marketing of a company, and they're trying to find ways to make that even easier for individual consumers to do. And we're going to talk about all kinds of examples over the next few weeks. Marketing is not just the responsibility of the marketers in the organization. Marketing is actually a cross-functional activity that impacts every single department in an organization, and also various partners outside the organization as well. So marketing isn't a job that's done by a marketer and that they're the only person that's involved in developing a marketing strategy and implementing that strategy. In fact, marketing requires a lot of partners inside and outside the organization to work together to achieve the marketing objectives of the organization. So I feel like we're a little bit all over the place today, but I think that's normal for the first few chapters of an introductory course. We're going to go back to talking about creating loyalty and retention. Keeping customers loyal makes sense. It's a whole lot less expensive to keep your existing customers happy than it is to try to find brand new customers to replace them. So it makes sense to take a look at who your current customers are and make sure you continue to work to make them happy and satisfied, to keep them loyal. One of the ways we measure customer loyalty is a concept called customer lifetime value. This is the value of an entire stream of purchases that a single customer is going to make over their lifetime, right? So if a customer chooses to leave your organization and shop somewhere else, you not only lose that single sales transaction, but you lose the lifetime of their sales transactions, potentially, unless you can win them back. So it's really, really important to keep your existing customers satisfied. For example, the consumer lifetime value of a Lexus customer is about $60,000. That assumes that they buy maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 cars over their lifetime, and that's how much the customer lifetime value of a Lexus customer might be if you can keep them loyal to your brand. The customer lifetime value of a Starbucks customer is $14,000. That's not even close to what my lifetime value is for Starbucks. I had a student a couple of years ago who tried to calculate how much money I've spent at Starbucks in the past 10 years, and you would need to more than double that amount. So my customer lifetime value for Starbucks far exceeds an average Starbucks customer. So again, Starbucks management wants to keep me very satisfied, because if I become disenchanted with Starbucks, they're not just losing the $5.81 I'm going to spend tomorrow at Starbucks. They're actually losing all of the lifetime value that I would have spent if they had maintained me as a loyal customer. We mentioned this concept a few slides ago, the growing share of customer, the portion of a customer's purchasing in a particular product category that your company gets in comparison to the competition. The share of customer that you get can be increased by improving the customer relationship that you have with that customer, offering greater variety to your current existing customers, or creating programs to cross-sell or upsell to existing customers. So for example, um, maybe well, it's sort of when you're working at McDonald's and you have a regular customer that comes in and they buy whatever they buy every day. If you can convince them to spend a little bit more money with you, so maybe instead of just getting their burger, they also start to buy an order of fries, you're increasing the share of customer. So if you can encourage your existing customers to not just continue to buy from you, but to buy more from you, that's what's called growing your share of customer. Customer equity is the combined customer lifetime values of all the company's customers. So that is your customer equity. How much your customers, how much value you're expected to derive from those customers. It measures the future value of the company's current customer base. Now, of course, this could change if you get more customers or you encourage customers to spend more money with you. This, of course, can change. It increases when the loyalty of the firm's profitable customers increase. So if they're more loyal, they spend more money with you. Those are ways to increase your customer equity. And it comes from not only your current customers, but those customers that you acquire into the future. So it doesn't mean if you have an existing customer base that it's only those customers you should be concerned about. They're incredibly important, but you also want to continually bring in new customers as well to ultimately grow your customer equity. This is a really great little chart on how you can categorize 4 different types of customers based on their profitability and their loyalty. This makes a really, really good exam question. So you can categorize your customers in 4 broad ways. Butterflies are those customers that have really high potential for profitability, but their loyalty is rather short term. That's okay. It's still probably worthwhile pursuing those customers, but you may want to investigate or invest in strategies to convert these butterflies, these very profitable customers, into more long-term customers, which are called true friends. So true friends, those customers are very profitable and their loyalty is expected to be maintained over the long term. These are the most coveted and valued type of consumer. You want to keep these people happy for as long as you possibly can. Barnacles are customers that actually don't make you a lot of money, but they're going to stick around regardless. And a lot of companies have these kinds of customers where they purchase from you, but the profitability is rather low. Maybe it's because there's somebody, for example, who returns a lot of products or requires a great deal of support, after-sales support that sort of eats into your profitability. So these kinds of customers, lots of companies have them. They're not the kind of customer you really want to cultivate unless you can turn them into another kind of customer. But you don't want to keep them as barnacles. You're not going to be developing marketing strategies to keep these barnacles around. And strangers are customers that have right now sort of low overall profitability and they're not particularly loyal, but you might be able to, through some strategic marketing initiatives, turn them into butterflies or true friends. So it may be worth looking at that particular group of customers to see if you can move them into either butterflies or into true friends. But if not, then you don't spend a lot of time and energy investing in them because you're not making a lot of money off of them. So this is a great exam question. I encourage you to read this section of Chapter 1 to make sure that you're very familiar with this particular little chart. This is also a really good question. I put this one on a lot of exams. Marketing is changing. The way we marketed in the past is not the way we're marketing today, and it's not the way we're going to market into the future. And there's 4 sort of broad categories or ways in which the marketing landscape is changing. We're going to go through them in more detail. There's technology, the digital age, and how that's changing marketing. There's the growth of not-for-profit marketing. So marketing used to be reserved for profit-oriented businesses, but we're seeing an explosion in marketing activities for companies that are not for profit. So educational institutions, hospitals, charitable organizations are increasingly doing their own marketing. And so we're going to talk about that more in a minute as well. Rapid globalization, this idea that, especially in terms of e-commerce, your customer base may literally be scattered around the world. And what does that mean for marketing? And increasingly, consumers are demanding that companies look at issues around sustainability and how marketing contributes to or degrades our overall sort of sustainability in terms of environmental and societal sustainability. So we're going to talk a lot more about those in the next couple of slides. It probably doesn't come as a big surprise to you, but the digital age, online, mobile, social media, and access to big data have radically changed the way marketing happens. Every single year, we see the proportion of marketing dollars spent on traditional marketing activities like traditional advertising decline, and the proportion of marketing dollars spent on online social media marketing, mobile marketing, and big data is just exploding every year. Most companies that target end consumers have some sort of presence online, whether it's social media accounts or web pages, and all of these things are changing the way that marketers operate. And it's also changing the way in which consumers engage with brands and products. And we're going to talk a lot more about the technology side of it later in the semester when we talk about digital direct marketing. Social media marketing is just one part of the sort of digital marketing age that we're in right now. And it represents a terrific vehicle for companies to meaningfully engage with their customers. So whether it's platforms like Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, all those platforms offer real opportunities to engage in meaningful ways with customers in a two-way exchange of sort of I guess ideas or that relationship. So it's really, really important. A lot of students make the mistake of thinking that social media marketing is free, and they think that's the real advantage to social media marketing, and they could not be more wrong. Good social media marketing is absolutely not free. It is incredibly strategic, and we're going to talk a lot more about that in the coming weeks. So what do we mean when we talk about big data? Well, marketers now have access to information about us as consumers that you cannot even begin to imagine. They do this through mining and extracting data from social media platforms. They do that through our online activities. They do that through their loyalty programs. Every time you swipe your card, they're collecting data about you. And marketers are using that data to become much more strategic and targeted in their marketing activities. We're going to talk a lot more about data and how it's used and how it's beneficial to marketers. Also, we'll talk about how it's beneficial to consumers. And then also, we're going to talk about how it's dangerous and how we may want to think about, or at least be more aware of the kinds of data that companies are collecting about us and what they're able to do with that data. Ultimately, marketers are using this to develop what's called artificial intelligence and make marketing decisions based on data at lightning speed and to apply these insights to engage their customers in real time and help them through the buying process. And we'll talk a lot more about that coming up as well. As I mentioned a few slides ago, historically, we've mostly focused on marketing from the perspective of organizations that are looking to make money, to make a profit. And certainly for the bulk of this particular course, that's really what we're talking about when we talk about the organizations that are doing marketing. But increasingly, not-for-profit organizations are also using marketing strategies to attract membership, to raise money, to advance their particular cause, all those sorts of things. So we're increasingly seeing organizations that historically have not done a lot of marketing starting to do some marketing. And basically the principles are exactly the same. The only difference is it's not necessarily being done for profitable reasons. There's other types of exchanges going on rather than just purely money, although it could be money in terms of fundraising, but it's not strictly tied to money. And we'll talk a little bit more about that over the coming weeks as well. It won't come as a surprise to anyone that globalization is impacting marketing activities. Managers around the world have to take into account not only what's happening in their local region, but also the global context. Because especially if you do business online, but not just if you do business online, but certainly if you do business online, your customers really could be anywhere around the world. McDonald's serves 60 million customers every day in 36,000 locations in over 100 different countries. They have to understand what globalization is doing to their business. 75% of their revenue is coming from outside of the US. So they need to have a good handle on global issues and how globalization is changing the business environment in which they compete. Companies like Nike sells their products in 190 different countries. Companies are also increasingly partnering with organizations outside their home country, getting supplies from companies from other countries. Those things all have an impact on how marketers behave. So it's really important to understand how globalization might be shaping the marketing activities that a company is embarking on. This one is becoming incredibly important. Consumers are increasingly demanding that the businesses with which they engage behave in ethically and socially responsible manners. We're expecting our companies' values to align with our own values. And we see that regularly in all kinds of social movements. When it's Pride Month in PEI, we see a lot of companies jumping on that bandwagon to show their support for the LGBTQ community. With the Black Lives Matter movement that has really gained traction over the past several months, we've seen some companies and organizations and brands, particularly the NBA, for example, who have really gotten behind that particular social movement, and customers are looking for that increasingly from the companies that they're dealing with. We want to support companies that are doing good, and so especially young people, but a lot of consumers are now making consumer decisions in part to support those businesses that are being sustainable or socially responsible. So that's a huge trend in marketing. And we're going to actually, my third year class this semester, it's going to be a real focal point of what we're talking about. But it's increasingly important, and I don't think this is going away anytime soon. And this is really in response to if you go a few slides back where I said that customers now have more power in the relationship. We don't have more power than the companies, but companies used to have all the power and customers had very, very little. And now that's more balanced. And because it's more balanced, that relationship is more balanced, consumers are demanding companies behave in a responsible manner. And we have a means of communicating that to them, a lot of times through social media. And so companies are responding to that demand from customers. If I had to draw a picture of what we were going to be talking about over the next 10 or 12 weeks or so, this would be the picture. We're going to talk about all of these things. We're going to talk about market research. We're going to talk about pricing. We're going to talk about distribution. We're going to talk about targeting and segmentation. We're going to talk about customer relationship management. This is really sort of a bit of a workflow of what we're going to be talking about over the next few months. So hopefully this slideshow really just gave you a bit of a taste of what is to come in the coming weeks. So to wrap up these slides, what we're going to talk about in marketing is again to introduce you to marketing from the business's perspective, to put words and concepts behind a lot of the things that you already know with respect to marketing to help develop those critical thinking and problem solving skills. We're going to talk a lot about communications because a lot of marketing activities are tied to communications. We're certainly going to talk about technology and marketing analytics, things like market research, and how we use that data to make better, more informed marketing decisions. We're going to talk about how marketing fits in with all of the other aspects of business, whether it's accounting and finance and human resources. We're going to talk about those things. And of course, we'll talk about business ethics and being socially responsible and the role that marketers have to play in those kinds of activities for an organization. So that's it for chapter 1. I encourage you to read chapter 1 to get a even more in-depth overview of the various topics that we covered today, and then move on to chapter 2. Thanks.